At the lavish engagement party Kelly had spent months planning, she clinked her glass and smiled at the crowd. "Everyone," she said sweetly, her voice carrying across the marble hall. "This is Luke. He's my driver." The laughter that rippled through the room was soft but cruel. Some guests raised their eyebrows. Others exchanged glances, hiding their smirks behind champagne flutes. I stood there, holding the small velvet box I had prepared, feeling the weight of it burn through my fingers. For a second, I thought maybe I'd misheard her, but the amusement in her eyes confirmed otherwise. I smiled, a calm, practiced smile. Then, I pulled the car keys from my pocket, the ones to the limited edition sports car Kelly had been bragging about to her friends, and spun them lazily on my finger. I turned to the girl standing awkwardly at the edge of the crowd, the one Kelly had spent her whole life competing with. Katrina, her younger sister, wearing a simple dress that looked almost out of place among the glitter and gold. "Miss," I said casually, tossing her the keys. "Would you be so kind as to drive me somewhere more interesting?" Katrina caught the keys out of pure reflex. The whole hall seemed to freeze. Kelly's smile faltered. "Luke," she hissed under her breath, reaching for my arm. "Stop it, you're making a scene." But I was already walking away, not even sparing her a glance. The crowd parted like water before me. The sound of my footsteps on the marble echoed louder than all their whispers combined. Katrina hesitated only a moment before hurrying after me, clutching the keys tightly in her hand. As the heavy glass doors closed behind us, the cool night air hit my face like a slap of reality. Katrina glanced up at me, her voice trembling. "Are you sure about this?" I opened the passenger door for her with a slight bow. "Drive," I said, voice calm. "And don't look back." As the engine roared to life, I caught a glimpse of Kelly through the glass, standing frozen in the middle of the glittering ballroom, watching the life she had carefully constructed slip straight through her fingers. Katrina kept stealing glances at me as she maneuvered through the city streets, her hands gripping the steering wheel a little too tightly. I leaned back in the seat, loosening my tie with one hand, my mind already 1,000 miles away from the glowing hotel behind us. The silence between us wasn't awkward. It was heavy, almost grounding. I didn't feel the need to fill it. I wasn't angry. I wasn't even surprised. Somewhere deep down, I'd known something like tonight would happen. Kelly was beautiful, dazzling, the kind of woman who knew how to play a room like a grand piano. When she smiled, people gave her everything they had without a second thought. Including me. Once. We met 4 years ago, at a corporate networking event neither of us wanted to attend. I was still clawing my way up back then, struggling to keep the small logistics company I'd inherited from my father alive. Kelly had already been polished, poised, whispering sweet promises of a future that gleamed just as brightly as the diamonds she wore. She noticed me because I didn't chase her like the others did. Maybe that's what made me interesting to her. Maybe it was the challenge, the novelty, I couldn't say. What I did know was that from the moment she slid her hand into mine and said, "You're different," it had already started, a game I didn't even realize I was playing. Over the years, I built myself into the kind of man people noticed. Bigger. Contracts, flashier cars, a name that actually meant something, and Kelly was right there beside me, basking in the glow. We looked good together. Power couple material, people said. But what they didn't see was the cracks beneath the surface. The little ways she pulled, pushed, chipped away at who I was until I barely recognized myself anymore. A year ago, I proposed. It wasn't some grand romantic gesture. No fireworks, no cameras. Just me, her, and a ring I'd spent a stupid amount of time picking out because I thought she deserved something perfect. Kelly cried, said yes, hugged me like she meant it. Tonight, she introduced me as her driver. I wasn't even furious about the insult itself. I was furious that I had allowed it to get this far. Furious that despite all the signs, all the gut feelings I'd ignored, I had still shown up tonight planning to give her the car she had been hinting about for months, the one she had told her friends she deserved because she was putting up with so much. Katrina turned the wheel sharply, exiting onto a quieter road lined with trees. The city lights dimmed behind us, swallowed by the night. Finally, she spoke. "Where are we going?" I looked at her properly for the first time. She had always been quieter than Kelly, softer somehow, but not weak. There was a fire there, hidden beneath the surface. Kelly had once joked that Katrina would die a lonely librarian because she was too boring for real life. I used to laugh at those jokes. I wasn't laughing now. "Anywhere but there," I said simply. "Just drive until you feel like stopping." Katrina bit her lip, nodded, and focused back on the road. I watched her in the dim light, the determined set of her jaw, the way her hands steadied after every turn. She wasn't rattled. She wasn't asking questions she already knew the answers to. She was just here, in this moment, figuring it out as she went. It was oddly reassuring. My phone buzzed against my leg. I didn't have to look to know it was Kelly. I didn't touch it. Let it ring. Let her squirm. Let her explain to the guests why the driver had left with her sister. "Do you want to talk about it?" Katrina asked quietly after a while. "No," I said without hesitation. She nodded like she understood, like she wasn't offended. Another long stretch of silence unfolded between us, but this time it was lighter, almost peaceful. I closed my eyes briefly, feeling the tension bleed out of my shoulders. Maybe I had been wrong all along. Maybe love wasn't supposed to feel like constantly fighting to be enough. Maybe it was supposed to feel like this, a quiet, steady presence that didn't demand anything. When I opened my eyes, again, we were pulling into a small overlook, a grassy patch that offered a sweeping view of the city skyline. Katrina cut the engine. The world seemed to hold its breath. She glanced at me, unsure. Should I stay? The old me, the one desperate to hold things together, to avoid making scenes, would have told her to go, told her this wasn't her problem, that it wasn't fair to drag her into my mess. But I wasn't that man anymore. "You can stay," I said, my voice low but certain. "If you want." Katrina hesitated only a heartbeat before unbuckling her seatbelt and folding her legs up onto the seat, curling into herself like a cat settling into a place she finally felt safe. I leaned back again, letting the quiet surround us. Inside that car, in the middle of nowhere, with a girl who had been an afterthought for too many years, I realized something. I wasn't running away from Kelly tonight. I was running towards something else, something better. The first message came through at midnight, then another, and another. I didn't read them. I didn't need to. I knew the rhythm by now, the cycle of Kelly's anger, fear, and apology. First would be the indignation. "How dare you humiliate me?" Like that. Then the wounded pride. "You misunderstood. It was just a joke." Finally, the desperation. "Come back. We can fix this." I watched my phone light up again and again on the dashboard, each time a little brighter, a little more frantic. Katrina hadn't said a word since we stopped. She sat quietly beside me, her chin tucked against her knees, her hair spilling over one shoulder. Every so often, she'd glance at the buzzing phone, but she never asked questions. She never pried. "You're not going to answer her?" she finally asked, her voice low. "No," I said simply. "Not even to say goodbye?" I thought about it. About closure. About dignity. About the 1,000 conversations Kelly and I had had where I tried to explain myself, tried to fix something that she never intended to change. I thought about the ring still sitting in my pocket, heavy and useless. "No," I repeated. Katrina nodded and let it drop. We sat there staring out over the city, the hum of the distant traffic rising like a lullaby. I should have felt numb. I should have felt hollow. Instead, there was a strange clarity settling over me, as if for the first time in years, the noise in my head had gone silent. I didn't know how long we stayed like that. Long enough for the stars to fade and the sky to start lightening. Long enough for my chest to loosen, for my fists to unclench. At some point, Katrina shifted, pulling a thin cardigan around her shoulders. Without thinking, I shrugged off my jacket and draped it over her. She looked startled. Then she smiled. A small, genuine thing that felt more real than anything I had seen in a long time. "You're not what I thought you were," she said quietly. I raised an eyebrow. "What did you think I was?" She shrugged. "Another suit, someone who thought the world owed him something because he worked hard." "Maybe I am," I said. "No," she said, shaking her head. "You just wanted someone to choose you, not because of what you could give them, just because." The truth of it landed sharper than I expected. I turned away, staring back at the skyline. "I'm tired," I admitted, "of proving myself, of earning love like it's a paycheck." Katrina said nothing. She didn't rush to fill the silence with empty reassurances. She just sat there, letting me say the thing I'd never admitted to anyone, not even to myself. The phone buzzed again. This time, Katrina reached over and picked it up, holding it out to me. "You should look," she said. Reluctantly, I took it. I scrolled through the barrage of messages, not reading them fully, just catching fragments. "Luke, please. You humiliated me. Come back, let's talk. You don't understand. It was a joke, Luke, a stupid joke. You're overreacting. You're ruining everything." And then, tucked between the rants and pleas, a single message that made my chest tighten. Only said it because Dad told me to. I stared at the words, my mind grinding to a halt. "What's wrong?" Katrina asked gently. I turned the screen toward her. She frowned, reading it carefully. "What does that mean?" "It means," I said slowly, the pieces clicking together with a sickening clarity, "that Kelly didn't introduce me as her driver to make fun of me, not just to mock me anyway. It was deliberate, a setup." "For what?" "For her father," I said. "He never liked me. He thought I wasn't good enough. He wanted to humiliate me, make me look like a nobody in front of everyone important." Katrina's eyes widened. "But why? You're not one of them," I interrupted, a bitter laugh escaping before I could stop it. "Not born into it, not part of the right circles, just some guy who worked his way up and got too close to something they thought should stay out of reach." Katrina looked stricken. "Kelly went along with it?" I didn't answer. I didn't have to. The messages said enough. A part of me wanted to drive back, to confront her, to shout in her face and demand to know when exactly she decided I was worth less than her father's approval. But a bigger part of me, the part that had grown stronger, tonight, knew it wouldn't matter. I could spend the rest of my life fighting for someone who had already decided I wasn't enough, or I could walk away, finally, before I lost the last pieces of myself. I tossed the phone onto the dashboard and turned to Katrina. "Do you want to get breakfast?" I asked. She blinked. "Now?" "Now." A small laugh escaped her, light and unsure. But then she nodded. "Yeah," she said. "Yeah, I'd like that." The car started smoothly under her touch. As we pulled away from the overlook, the city slowly waking beneath the soft blush of dawn, I realized the real betrayal tonight wasn't Kelly mocking me in public. It was me believing, even for a second, that I needed her to validate my worth. I didn't need her. I never did. The cafe we found was quiet, tucked away on a side street the morning rush hadn't touched yet. It smelled like coffee beans and fresh bread, the kind of place that didn't need to advertise itself. Katrina parked the car and looked at me for direction. I just nodded toward the entrance. Inside, the world felt smaller, slower. It was a strange kind of peace, but fragile, like if I moved the wrong way, it might shatter. We ordered without thinking. Black coffee for me, tea with too much sugar for her, pancakes we wouldn't finish, toast we didn't need. It was easier to focus on the little things, the clink of silverware, the scratch of pens across receipts, than on the heaviness pooling in my chest. Katrina stirred her tea in slow circles, her eyes darting toward me and away again. She wasn't prying. She wasn't pushing. She just sat there, a steady presence, waiting for me to find the words I didn't even know I had. I didn't understand why it hurt so much. I shouldn't have been surprised. I shouldn't have cared. But somewhere between building a life and giving away pieces of myself, I had convinced myself that if I just loved Kelly enough, If I just succeeded enough, it would be enough. It never was. I wrapped my hands around the coffee cup, letting the heat bleed into my palms, grounding me. My mind kept replaying last night, the look in Kelly's eyes when she called me her driver, the shallow smile, the way she had clung to the approval of people who didn't even know me. I had loved her once, or maybe I had loved the idea of her. The promise that being with her meant I had made it, that I had value. How pathetic. I closed my eyes, breathing in deep, trying to push away the bitterness rising in my throat. It was a useless feeling. It wouldn't change what happened. It wouldn't change the fact that somewhere deep down, Kelly never really saw me at all. "You're shaking," Katrina said softly. I opened my eyes. She was right. My hands were trembling, barely noticeable but real. I set the cup down carefully, forcing a smile that felt more like a grimace. "I'm fine," I lied. Katrina didn't argue. She didn't say, "You're not fine," or "It's okay to be upset." She just slid her tea across the table toward me, as if offering something sweeter to balance the bitterness I was drowning in. I stared at the cup for a long moment before chuckling under my breath. "You're weird," I said. She smiled, small but genuine. "So are you." The cafe door jingled as more people trickled in. The world kept spinning, oblivious to the fact that somewhere in a quiet corner, someone was trying to stitch himself back together. I didn't know what came next. I didn't know if I even wanted to try again, with anyone, with anything. Maybe it was safer not to. Maybe it was better to stay cold, detached, untouchable. But as Katrina sat there across from me, sipping her too sweet tea and pretending not to notice that I was falling apart in slow, quiet pieces, I realized that maybe I didn't have to decide anything today. Maybe today was just about surviving. Maybe that was enough. My phone buzzed again. I ignored it. Another buzz. Another. Finally, I turned it over and muted it without even checking who it was. I wasn't going to let the past chase me into this moment. "You don't have to stay," I said quietly. Katrina frowned. "Do you want me to leave?" I shook my head immediately, more desperate than I meant to be. "No, I just don't want you to feel like you have to." She considered that for a long moment. Then she leaned back in her chair, crossing her arms casually as if settling in for a long conversation. "I'm not here because I have to be," she said. "I'm here because I want to be." Something inside me cracked at that. Not in a painful way. More like a hairline fracture in a wall that had been holding back too much for too long. I wanted to believe her. I wanted to believe that not everyone saw me as a stepping stone or a convenience. Maybe, just maybe, it was time to stop carrying the weight of other people's expectations. Maybe it was time to start living for myself. "I don't know what I'm doing," I admitted, voice low. "Nobody does," Katrina said simply. I laughed. A real laugh this time, small and hoarse and a little broken. Maybe that was okay too. We finished breakfast slowly, without hurry. Outside, the day brightened, the city waking up, oblivious to the quiet wars people fought inside themselves. When we finally stood to leave, Katrina reached for her bag and paused. "You're not alone, you know," she said softly, almost shyly. I didn't answer. I didn't trust my voice to stay steady. Instead, I just nodded, and for the first time in a very long time, I believed it. I thought maybe that would be the end of it. I thought maybe we could just drive into the morning, forget the chaos we left behind, and start something quieter, simpler, better. But life, as always, had other plans. The moment we pulled into the underground parking garage of my building, Katrina's phone started buzzing. Not once, not twice. An endless string of calls, one after another, vibrating so hard it practically danced off the dashboard. She frowned, glancing at the screen. Her expression shifted from confusion to alarm almost instantly. "It's Kelly," she said, voice tight. I stared at her for a moment, cold dread settling into my bones. "Answer it," I said. Katrina hesitated, then picked up. "Hello?" I couldn't hear Kelly's voice, but I could imagine it. Sharp, shrill, desperate. Katrina's eyes widened slightly. Then her mouth tightened into a thin line. She listened for a long time without interrupting. Whatever Kelly was saying, it wasn't good. Finally, Katrina cut in, her tone sharper than I'd ever heard it. "You're lying," she said. "I saw everything. You embarrassed him. You threw him away in front of all your friends." There was a pause, a long one. Then Katrina's hand started shaking. She looked at me, something like horror blooming across her face. She lowered the phone and put it on speaker. Kelly's voice filled the car, high-pitched and panicked. "You don't get it, Kat. Dad made me do it because he found out about Luke's deal. Luke's company is about to crash. It's all fake. He was just pretending to be successful. If I didn't humiliate him first, Dad would have exposed everything. I was trying to protect him." I sat there, frozen, the words crashing into me like a punch to the gut. "What deal?" Katrina asked, her voice trembling. Kelly's answer came fast, desperate. "Luke signed a supply contract with Jones's company. Dad's people found out it's rigged, a scam. If Luke doesn't fix it, he's finished. His reputation, his company, everything. I was trying to buy him time. I had no choice." The line went dead. Katrina looked at me, her eyes wide with confusion and fear. "Is it true?" she asked. I opened my mouth, then closed it again. My throat felt dry, raw. I wasn't sure what part to answer, because some of it was true, and some of it was so much worse than Kelly even knew. The parking garage was too quiet. The low hum of the fluorescent lights overhead seemed deafening in the silence that followed Kelly's call. Katrina waited, her hands gripping the steering wheel so tightly her knuckles were white. She didn't push me. She didn't demand answers. She just waited. I owed her the truth. I leaned my head back against the seat, staring up at the cracked ceiling. "It's not a scam," I said finally, "but it is dangerous." Katrina turned to me, her eyes searching. I closed my eyes for a second before continuing. 6 months ago, Jones approached me with an opportunity. His company had government contracts, lined up, big ones. Logistics, transport, international deals. He needed a partner who could move quickly, someone without a dozen board members slowing them down. "So you agreed," Katrina said. I nodded. I did my due diligence. It looked clean, risky but clean. But a month ago, I started getting warnings, anonymous messages, hints that Jones had bribed officials to secure the deals. That if the government audits hit, anyone tied to him would get dragged down too. "And you're tied to him," Katrina whispered. "Buried deep," I said bitterly. "Jones made sure of it." The worst part was, I had known. I had seen the signs. I just didn't want to believe them. I wanted the win. I wanted to finally step into a world where Kelly's father and his kind couldn't look down on me anymore. I had gambled everything, and it was starting to unravel faster than I could patch the cracks. Katrina sat back, letting out a slow, shaky breath. "So Kelly's father found out." I nodded. "And instead of helping you, they decided to humiliate you before it all blew up," she said, her voice flat with anger. "Protect the family name," I said. "Distance themselves. Make me look like a fool now, so when the real fallout hits, they can say they always knew." Katrina swore under her breath, something so uncharacteristic it almost made me smile. Instead, I looked at her seriously. "I don't expect you to stay." She turned sharply toward me. "You think that's what I'm worried about?" I didn't answer. I didn't know what I expected. Pity, maybe. Or that quiet, aching disappointment I had gotten used to seeing in people's eyes when they realized I wasn't invincible after all. Instead, Katrina unbuckled her seatbelt and turned fully to face me. "Luke," she said, voice shaking a little, "you didn't betray anyone. You tried, you fought, you believed in something. That's not a crime." I let out a harsh laugh. "Tell that to the regulators when they freeze my accounts." "Then we fight," she said simply. I stared at her, disbelief churning in my chest. "You don't get it, Kat. If this goes bad, I lose everything. Not just the company, the house, the cars, Everything. Then you start over, she said. Start over, I repeated hollowly. She nodded. With people who actually care about you this time. The simplicity of it staggered me. For so long, every move I made had been about maintaining appearances, climbing ladders that only ever led to more ladders. I had forgotten there was another way to live. Kelly's father, Jones, the investors, they all played the same game. Loyalty was a currency they only spent when it benefited them. But Katrina wasn't playing. She was just standing there, offering herself up, fragile and furious and real. A lump rose in my throat, sharp and unexpected. I don't deserve that, I said quietly. Katrina's eyes softened. That's not your decision. For the first time in years, I wanted to believe someone. The sound of tires screeching outside shattered the fragile moment. Katrina flinched. I reached across her instinctively, pushing her back into her seat as a sleek black SUV came to a hard stop at the garage entrance. Jones. I knew it even before the door opened and he stepped out, casual as you please, like he owned the whole damn building. Two men flanked him, bulky, expensive suits that didn't quite hide the muscles underneath. I cursed under my breath. Stay here, I told Katrina. No, she said immediately. Cat? No. I didn't argue. I didn't have time. Jones sauntered over, a smirk playing on his lips. Luke, he drawled. Fancy seeing you here. What do you want? I said, keeping my voice even. Jones shrugged. Just a friendly warning. It's a bad idea to start asking too many questions. Some deals aren't meant to be poked at. Katrina slid out of the car and stood beside me, small but unshakable. Jones's eyes flicked to her and then back to me, amusement gleaming. Ah, the sister. Interesting. Leave her out of it, I said. Jones smiled, wide and wolfish. You're in too deep for ultimatums, Luke. You walk away quietly, maybe you salvage what's left. Or you make noise, and everything burns. I met his gaze without blinking. Then let it burn. Jones's smile faded slightly. You always were stubborn, he said. Get used to it, I said. For a heartbeat, no one moved. Then Jones chuckled, backing away, hands raised in mock surrender. Have it your way, he said. But don't say I didn't warn you. He turned and got back into his SUV. The tires screeched again as they peeled away, disappearing into the city's early morning haze. I exhaled slowly, the adrenaline leaving me shaky. Katrina grabbed my hand without thinking, clutching it tightly. You just made an enemy, she whispered. I've had worse, I said. But as I looked down at her small hand wrapped around mine, I realized something. I wasn't afraid. Not because the danger wasn't real, but because for the first time I wasn't standing alone, and no matter what came next, I wasn't going back. The engagement announcement between me and Kelly quietly retracted. The photos of us that once flooded social media wiped clean like we never existed. Kelly's father made a public statement wishing me the best in my future endeavors, the kind of hollow courtesy that masked relief. Jones, though, he wasn't content with words. It started with whispers about delayed shipments, about silent investors pulling out, rumors Jones had been raided by financial authorities. In truth, I was the one pulling the strings. The moment I realized I was a pawn, I started digging. Not alone. Quietly, strategically, with a few people who owed me favors and knew how to turn stones over without leaving fingerprints. Evidence piled up faster than I could have hoped. Contracts doctored, emails buried, bribes thinly disguised as consulting fees. By the time Jones realized I was no longer running, it was too late. A single package, hand-delivered to the proper authorities, turned whispers into headlines overnight. Corruption, fraud, collusion. Jones's S Company collapsed like a house of cards, taking half a dozen others down with it. By the time they showed up at his office, he wasn't there. Rumors said he fled overseas trying to outrun the warrants. He wouldn't get far. Katrina watched it all unfold beside me, calm and steady. "You could have destroyed a lot more," she said once, scrolling through the endless news coverage. "I didn't need to," I said. "I only needed to destroy the right thing." Kelly's father tried to call. So did Kelly herself. I didn't answer. I didn't need their apologies. I didn't need their explanations. I already had everything I wanted. Freedom, and something else too. Something better. The night the news officially confirmed Jones's company collapse, Katrina and I sat on the balcony of my new apartment. Small, modest, overlooking the water. We didn't say much. We didn't need to. She handed me a glass of wine, her fingers brushing mine. "You look different," she said quietly. "Older? Wiser?" I smiled a little. "Took long enough." Katrina tucked her legs under herself, her hair blowing softly in the night breeze. "Are you happy?" It was a simple question. For a long moment, I didn't answer. I looked out over the dark water, the city lights shimmering in the distance. Then, I turned back to her. "I am," I said, "not because of the money, not because of the revenge, but because for the first time, I wasn't chasing anyone's approval. I wasn't begging anyone to see my worth. I was just me, and she was still here." We sat there in silence, letting the night carry the last remnants of the past away. Weeks passed. Katrina started spending more time at my place. Sometimes she brought books, sometimes ideas. She didn't ask for anything. She didn't expect anything. She was just there. One evening, I found her curled up on the couch, half asleep over some documents she had been helping me sort through. Her hair fanned out over the cushions, her breathing soft and steady. I stood there for a long moment watching her. I had been wrong before, thinking love had to be loud, dramatic, overwhelming. This quiet certainty was love too, maybe even the real kind. I moved carefully, draping a blanket over her shoulders. She stirred, blinking up at me, disoriented. "Hey," she mumbled, her voice thick with sleep. "Hey," I said, crouching beside her. She smiled drowsily. "You look serious." "I am serious," I said. Her smile faded slightly, sensing the change in my tone. I reached into my pocket, pulling out the old velvet box I had once meant for Kelly. I had kept it, not because I wanted to, but because throwing it away had felt too easy, too incomplete. I opened it. The diamond gleamed under the soft lights. Katrina stared wide-eyed. "You're crazy," she whispered. "Probably," I said, "but I'm not asking you to fix me. I'm not asking you to save me. I'm just asking if you want to keep walking forward with me." She stared at me for a long moment, the silence stretching taut between us. Then, slowly, she nodded. "Yes," she said simply. Not dramatic. Not complicated, just yes. I slipped the ring onto her finger. It was too big. It didn't matter. She laughed a little, wiping at her eyes. "You're an idiot," she said. "I know." She grabbed my face between her hands, pulling me down into a kiss, so full of everything we hadn't said that my chest ached with it. When we pulled apart, she rested her forehead against mine. "I guess," she said softly, "we're both idiots." "Best kind," I said. And for the first time in a very long time, I felt completely, utterly at peace. We didn't throw a huge wedding. We didn't send out glossy invitations or rent a ballroom. We signed the papers at City Hall hand in hand, laughing the whole time. Later, over greasy takeout and cheap champagne, Katrina leaned against me and said, "You know, you never really got revenge on Kelly." I smiled lazily, sipping from the bottle. "Didn't I?" She frowned, confused. "She's still stuck in that world," I said. "Still chasing approval, still playing games. She has to live with knowing that the man she thought she could throw away built a better life without her." Katrina thought about that for a moment, then smiled, slow and wicked. "I guess that is better," she said. "The best kind," I agreed. The world kept turning, the city kept spinning. But somewhere in a modest apartment above a quiet street, two idiots who chose each other over everything else built something no amount of betrayal could touch, and neither of us ever looked back.